Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing really well and staying safe and are ready for today's talk. I want to welcome you not only on the Settee, but also into the front room, which is the beginning of an ambitious, long-term neighbourhood platform in Birmingham to be designed, grown and co-owned by local communities. For those who might be joining us for the first time, welcome, hello. I'd like to give you some insight into what On the Settee is. So in the front room, the Settee offers a place of sanctuary, a place where you can take a load off. And on our Settee, you'll discover conversations that will slot into your day, like a catch up with an old friend or your favorite song, something that makes you feel at home, open, yet vulnerable and connected with yourself and others. So as part of our Beyond Books Starting Revolution series, we'll be joined by photographer Alison Baskerville on the Settee to talk about Babs on Bikes, personal cycling stories from women and non-binary people in Birmingham. Also, as part of this series, we welcome Jules Walker, aka Lady Velo, in conversation with Hannah Ross, the author of Revolutions, and I will put the date on the last slide so you'll be able to write that in your diaries for when that conversation is happening. So I'm your host, Danny Ebanks Ingram, also known as Zaz, also known as Zazu, and today I'll be speaking to Alison Baskerville. So Ali, if you would like to come on, that would be amazing. And just to let anyone know who's joining us here in Zoom, the Q&A is open, so please feel free to drop us your questions. If you're watching us live from YouTube, please use the comment section and drop us your questions there and they will get to us magically, not really, just through the internet. So yeah, hi Ali, how are you doing? Hello, it's nice to see
you. You too. I'm good.
Everything.
I had a feeling that Tink might bark as soon as I get onto any kind of Zoom meeting. She's like got a sixth sense that.
For anyone who's wondering, Tink is Ali's dog, just for context.
Yeah, also part of my bike.
Yeah,
she
exactly.
cycles with me too,
which is really cool. I love seeing Tink in the basket in the front. It's amazing. So I think a nice place to start would just be, who are you, Alison Baskerville? What do you do? What are your connections with?
Who are you? What are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, my name's Ali B, Ali Baskerville, pronouns she, her. I'm a lover of bikes. I'm also I say like ex-photojournalist because I'm definitely loving more documentary work now as a photographer. A little bit of an artist now and again. And yeah, I do one of those, I think they're referred to as multi-potentialites. I've got like lots of different shapes and sizes of hats and colors and things like that, and I'm also like a safety trainer for journalists, amongst other things. But yeah, for today I'm a lover of bikes.
Bikes. So we're tapping into that part of your work and your thinking and your connections. Okay, so my first question would be, what was the force behind Babs on Bikes and what is Babs on Bikes?
Yeah, that's a good question to start on, really. So I feel like I say this a lot, the space formerly known as Impact Hub down in that old Digbeth down in Birmingham city centre, there was we always had loads of really great talks and guests that came in, and we had one that was particularly stood out for me. There were so many, but this one was really special because it involved a group bike ride with Jules Walker and also Aisha Rosanna Anna McGowan, who's a pro road cyclist, the Quick Brown Fox is also known as. And they were invited into the space to talk about their experience of cycling. And I think, interestingly, I realized that like my perception of cycling and also like who gets to like be celebrated in cycling is so important, because I am very like, aware of the fact that I'm a cis white woman and that's how I've perceived my existence up until now. And that also within cycling, I'd often like been looking at men cycling all the time and how men get to enjoy like professional cycling, and that the Tour de France is just all about men. And I was like, but wait a minute, like if I'm experiencing that as who I am, then of course like a black woman or a black queer woman is going to experience this, or a non-binary person is going to be like further removed from being celebrated on a bike. And I'm like, wow, like every layer of enjoyment that we should be free to experience has got some like form of like discrimination in it, right? As soon as it's like
100%.
you know, becomes a sport and you know becomes professionalized in whatever that means, you get less visibility. So meeting Aisha and seeing her like killing it at professional cycling, I was like, whoa.
As if this is happening. What?
Yeah.
Like, it's just
And I
been
realized then
happening.
how rare that is, right? And like if you
Yeah.
follow her on Twitter and see what she's up to, yeah, just super inspiring. And also that she says like, I don't want to be a trailblazer for this, I just want to be this, like I just want to do it, I don't want to have to be the only one. And I think Jules Walker echoed this a little bit, but she's about leisure cycling, using cycling for whatever leisure cycling is. It's all like leisure and pleasure, but for her, like her journey into her bike is like really centered in her mental health and her well-being, and is not about having like certain brands or wearing like full lycra, and you know, and that's like also okay, because actually there isn't even a lot of people doing that who are not sort of like straight white men, right? So so it's like you can do all those things, but Jules represents the kind of more, this is about like a real like mental health aspect, but also it was about fun, and it was about exploring, it was about like stepping forward or cycling forwards and doing new things. And like she has the most amazing Brompton bike I've ever seen. And so
yeah,
like when they both came to the hub, I was just like, this is like just gave me so much love for cycling again, because in Birmingham it's not great for cycling, you know, we're still lacking like the infrastructure.
Yeah.
So you need like a bit of solidarity. And when we went on a group cycle ride together, just like all this collective joy on two wheels, like rolling through Harborne Parkway. Whoa, we're just creating a new place.
Switching it up, merging the places together.
Yeah,
We've got there's so many few cycle places.
That's the new cycle route, everybody. It's called Harborne Parkway. So we're gonna Harborne Walkway, then we went through Camden Hill Park, and then we sort of did a loop back to the hub. And yeah, and just speaking to Jules and Aisha on the way round, and just thinking, oh wait a minute, like how could we do something like this in Birmingham to like celebrate like our experience of cycling as women and non-binary people. And you know, and I'd moved quite far away from doing sort of frontline photography, but I still wanted to tell stories, but in a more softer but still important way. And you know, there's so many things around us that we could choose to tell stories about, and sometimes you just follow your gut at the time and you think, well, Babs on bikes, why don't we just do a whole thing about Babs on bikes and use a term that's not gender specific. And you know, we can either do portraits or do stories around, or I didn't know what it was. I just thought Babs on bikes needs to exist, and this is how we're going to do it. And at the same time, I'd like done the velo with Imi Kaur, and never in my wildest dreams had I thought that I could ever cycle 100 miles. I think my body's still recovering now.
What year was the velo in? Let's also put that out. What year was the velo?
Do you know what? I don't even know. I think it's
2019.
Like, yeah, I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have got through the last 2 kilometers without Imi shouting at me, because it was like, ah.
Yeah. I remember that day of the velo as well. It was like, I think there's something quite you really feel the support of your community in those spaces. I think when like you just do that last push and you're like, I can't do it, you know.
And I would not have put on my lycra shorts had I not like chatted to Jules and Aisha and been in that space. I would have,
Mm.
I was just like, stick this body shame stuff. I'm going to wear lycra. You're going to live with it. I'm just going to put it all on. Like, why? What? And I realized there's so many layers to like, even like cycling
Yeah.
and misogyny and, like, how you look on a bike. And I thought, and even if you want to wear like all the lycra and go fast, that's also amazing. Like Babs on Bikes is about all people who want to celebrate being on a bike in at whatever stage of cycling they do. Like it's not a competition, it's not a comparison. We could have someone who's just never been on a bike before and it's like their first ride around the park. So with that sort of foundation, sort of Babs on Bikes was manifested, created.
And when it was manifested and created with that energy behind it and that kind of real understanding of what I don't want to use the word missing, but it's maybe of a space that wasn't being explored in the same way, like, male cycling is, and also the way that like cycling does also have links to class. Not that it should, but there are definitely links around that kind of conversation. Did you feel like when Babs on Bikes was happening that it was kind of breaking down some of these things that we don't necessarily speak about in terms of cycling, like the kind of the class thing, that I think we speak about the male domination because you actively see that it kind of can't be denied. But I think when it comes to like class accessibility, whether that is to do with like the first thing that comes to mind is like having bikes that are more of like a drop through, rather than this like idea of like you're only a cyclist if you're on like a really speedy road bike and you've got to like lift your leg right over the seat. So do you think Babs on Bikes kind of just started to really challenge a little bit of that in like a very normal like way?
Yeah, I hope so. And I think you're right. There's common perceptions around almost everything, isn't there? And then there's the reality, and there's the nuance, and then there's the layers of it. And I often think as storytellers, we can sometimes tell the story through the lens of our own experience, which for me is kind of bad storytelling, or not bad, but sort of like a very narrow view of how things are. And I think you have to sort of break it down, think about like in mainstream media, the thing that's going to get televised is like the most well-known thing. So it is going to be kind of the Tour de France. And also that's equally, it's exciting to watch, but we can't get our sources of information from mainstream media, right? It's shaped in a certain way, it's targeted at us in a certain way. So there is a lot out there to kind of represent our experience of cycling. And I think what I just saw in the chat there was Gears for Queers, which I think is another like amazing book to sort of navigate that as well. But also look at the sort of bikes that are out there. There's a cycling community in Handsworth that adapt bikes so that people with different ranges of ability can cycle. And I suppose what this is really helping me to think about as well is the experience of telling the story through meeting Pauline Roche, who's is part of the Babs on Bikes. I don't even know what to call everyone, collective experience. And I think what happened with Pauline was so revealing and also transformational for both of us, in the sense that when she invited me round to meet her, and I know
that just stop. Sure. I'm just going to put the portrait on of Pauline now. Cool. So you keep speaking. I'll add that so you can have that as a in mind as well.
And I've spoke to Pauline today, and she's totally fine in sharing this story as well. But when I went round to her house to meet her, and I've known Pauline like a few years, and I've always known her to have a little bit of a limp, and you never ask people about that unless they want to share with you. But on this particular day, I go around to her house, and she like meets me at the door in a pair of shorts. I'm like, I've never seen Pauline in a pair of shorts, like ever. I mean, I'm not a short wearer that much either. So it's like, whoa, okay. And yeah, she said, look, I put my shorts on because I wanted to see my leg injury. And so this was like the first time that she'd really shown it to anybody outside of the house. And also how that had impacted and affected her ability to ride a bike, because of the very thing that you're talking about, which is to get your leg over the crossbars, or even for a step through, because that her leg that was injured has got a limited range, right? So she can't like rotate the pedal round, and even though this bike has like a slightly dropped middle bit, I don't know the right word, tube, I don't know. If Quat was listening to this, he'd be like, it's called a this is one of our friends who's like cycling. Yeah. So she couldn't get it over, and so the only way she could do it was to cycle round. She cycled around Balsa Park and showed me how she manages to get it round, and that you know, she wanted to get something to adapt the bike so that she could use it. And then when we put Babs on Bikes out through, which I'll talk about in a second, about where it kind of ended up, and also online, someone contacted her and said, I know how to do that for you. I can sort your bike out. And so she's had the bike adapted and is now able to cycle. And these are like the stories that I wasn't, you know, you never have an expectation when you're working on an idea. You just know that that exists somewhere, and someone will say, yeah, I'd love to do a piece with you about that, because you know, it's an opportunity to share another perspective on our relationship to cycling. And yeah, it was quite emotional really for both of us, because it wasn't just about the bike. The bike was just the start point for a story that Pauline wanted to share and felt it was the right time to do that. So I felt really honoured to hold that story for her, and to do those portraits with her and share that with people who would come to the exhibition. Or it went onto an article on the BBC, so it sort of boosted that visibility, and then would speak to other people who are, you know, would think, okay, I want to ride a bike, but I've got like an injury or an access reason where I can't cycle. But you know, there is places out there that exist to like adapt bikes,
absolutely,
so that you can help ride them.
And I think there's something around like it being the conversation around like accessibility and sport, and just doing anything that is to do with kind of mobility as well. I think when we're able to put our stories out there, like you said, people come in and they say, oh, yeah, I could help with that, or I can do this thing for you. And I think sometimes that is almost this like little like this little moment that means so much. Do you know what I mean? It's the small thing that's not actually a small thing.
Yeah.
And I think with cycling, and really specifically with like Pauline's story, because I didn't know about any of this until like I saw the exhibition and we had kind of spoken about it. And because I was in the exhibition as well, there was like this moment for me of like connecting with people. But Pauline's story like really like got me, because it's like this want to just get back on the saddle, doing the thing, right? And the fact that this has come after like an accident, but actually there's still like this real love for just what cycling can give you, and especially when you feel heard by people. I feel like there was a big thing around that. And when we took the portraits, when you took the portrait of me, my reflection on cycling was really kind of about this deep connection that I have with like childhood memories of me and my dad. And I wouldn't have necessarily pulled that out. I would have just been like, oh yeah, like I've got back into cycling because now where I work, which was Hub at the time, you know, people cycle, which is really awesome. But there's something about being able to like share in a way that is so present, but it can tap into so many different areas, which is really awesome. And there's something really wonderful kind of about that as well. So thank you for just touching on Pauline's story as well. So my kind of next little section, you've already literally mentioned like the names of the people that I would like wanted to go into, and which is really good, because I love when I'm having a conversation with someone and the connections are just there. You almost feel like you're in the right place as well, I guess. So you mentioned the event at Hub with Jules and Aisha, which was, I wasn't actually there at that event, but I read Jules's book, Back in the Frame, and that's actually what really like made me feel understood within this community, within bikes, within everything. But I just wanted to kind of make this link, just because this is also part of the series. Is like this link back to Revolutions, the book by Hannah Ross, where she highlights the forgotten females from cycling history and demonstrates like the simple act of riding as kind of being like a driver for social change, or for people to feel connected to themselves as well. So what this series of Babs on Bikes kind of made me feel was like that same celebration that Hannah Ross is doing, like retrospectively, is really like what's happening in Babs on Bikes, but it's like the current documentation and celebrating around that, with then this added layer of like highlights around gender and its spectrum and the stories behind our bike rides, and that thing that keeps kind of connecting us through our joy, our pain, our past, and taking us into almost like the next stage, into the next future thing, I guess. But I wanted to just like talk about this quote really, from Aisha McGowan, and it's, if you can't see yourself in this industry and you can't see yourself in that world, why in the world would you magically have this idea that you are part of it? And there's just something about that really makes me think, just kind of to touch on things that you've kind of said, right, that you're putting people, or allowing people to have the space to speak, to share. So I just wanted to share that that quote with you, everyone here in Zoom or watching YouTube. So my next question is, if there was one thing that you could share from like what you've learned from these stories in the community, like what would that be? For one thing, I know there's probably
just
like 10,000 things. I know, I'm so sorry. 2 things, 3 things, just things.
Oh
whichever.
no, it's good to like, it's good to zoom in occasionally, isn't it? Because sometimes my brain's like woo with these ideas. I suppose what I would say around this is just never underestimate people's passion to do things, and what they'll go through challenge wise to do it. Don't ever look at someone and think what's in them, or what they're capable of doing. I think we often try and wear our ability on the outside, but it's not the case. I've seen people with the most cheapest bike just go out there and build up to like do a 10-mile bike ride without like padded shorts or gloves and all that thing, right? Those things are really cool because they're helpful, but also I remember my friend doing like a 50-mile bike ride, and she did it on like one of those ladies shopper bikes once. And I also had a friend who did the Brighton big, like London to Brighton ride on a post office bike that only has 3 gears. So I think there's this and there's so many things that I learned from this, but I think in all things that I've done in the past, it's like, don't underestimate people. Everyone's got like an ability to shine in ways that you might not understand, but you should acknowledge and celebrate. There's not one way to do things. And during the Babs on Bike sessions, someone sent me the Afghan Cycles film about the female cycling team in Afghanistan. And I think showing that to people, cyclists, was very uplifting, because, you know, here's a team of cyclists who were donated some okay-ish road bikes, and, you know, went cycled and got together a women's team and did road cycling, and, like, you know, smashed it. You know, they did like serious miles on those bikes, and I think it's also interesting, because people also underestimate lots of different people, you know, and think, oh, someone can't do that, but it's rubbish. You to give people the resources and the tools and the access and the privilege, and just watch them go.
Absolutely.
That's because that's the problems, isn't it? It's the barriers that are put in place. It's not about the people themselves. So I think that's what I love about the sort of work that we do collectively, is that people don't want to be riding broken old bikes. They just probably can't afford to get it fixed, or you know, and so give them the tools, give them the space, give them someone to fix their bike, make those things easy. Don't, you know, don't like just think you have to buy like a $4,000 carbon bike. That's cool, do that, but also just remember that, you know what, there's many other ways to like to enjoy and embrace cycling. And like, if you've got a 3-speed shopping bike and that's the love of your life and you like cycling on it, do that as well.
Absolutely.
You know, so yeah, I think we are still like very judgmental as a society around people's passions and abilities, but I get so much joy seeing, like, I don't know, potentially seeing someone on a bike for the first time because of the way they're riding, like, or wobbly. But I also like know that they're experiencing this like level of joy, that because cycling just gives you this enormous sense of freedom sometimes. Like, there's something about being on a bike that's so different from walking or running or taking a bus. There's just something else about that, like, choice of just being able to change direction, go a different way. Maybe like sometimes I've gone out at night with lights on when there's nobody else on the road. Something really liberating about that as well. So
I fully agree. And I think, and I mentioned this earlier, and maybe it'll be good to hear like what you kind of like think around this. But even when you mentioned kind of, you know, you don't have to go out and spend like loads of money on this bike, right? But like, you can, let's say you do have like access to a bike that's like not like brand new, it's not like shiny and amazing, but it does like the job. This is for me where the parts of like class come into the conversation as well, because I think especially when we're at like a place in like the global conversations, like where we're speaking about the environment and we're speaking about kind of less cars or less just like better clean air and things like that. I think because of that, there then becomes this like there can become a thing that is like really trendy around like cycling. And I don't think it's the worst thing by any means, but I do think that is something that it can start to break down what is accessible to people. And actually, if you have a bike that's been passed down to you like a couple of generations and it's not brand new, but like you're able to go out and enjoy that and like feel good and get around and not have to maybe like rely on using your car X amount of times, or not rely on getting an Uber or a taxi or whatever, but something that gives you the freedom. There's something about that I think is really, really important. But I have to say, I think there were parts of me that really linked like road cycling with the like racers, and I have a racer bike, but it was linked to class for so long for me that like I had to really like tap out of that and be like, I just love this bike, man. Like my neighbor told it to me, it's like 28 years old now. You know, but the conversations around class I think are so interlinked with everything, right? Anyway, but yeah, I don't know if you've got anything else to add to that, but
I also think there's something about fun, isn't it? There's like, for me, like people's perceptions of fun are very different. Like, you know, we're all unique in what we class as like fun. And the most fun I had is like, had like my SLR camera like wrapped around my neck. Definitely was not a safe cycling moment. I was on my bike, you were on your bike.
Yes.
Neither of us had helmets on, and we were just flying around Mersey Village.
Oh my gosh, you were. With
my camera of me trying to take a picture of you while you're cycling along, and I just had a blast.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is awesome. Like, and you couldn't have done that on a road bike clipped in with your helmet and all that. And like,
no, absolutely not.
So it's just that I do worry that sometimes this idea of like what a cyclist is also entrenched in this idea of being productive and fast and, you know, making a certain time. And none of that is wrong. It's just very dominant, you know. And I think that that's how I feel sometimes about, and I noticed it in myself, you know, that I think, oh well, I'm not really a cyclist because I don't have this sort of bike. And I got myself a really decent like Trek gravel bike, and I still go out on my like 12-year-old other bike because it's got a basket on it for my dog, and it's got a rack on the back to put all my kit in it. And I think Jules said something really funny in her talk about her bike being called Frank the Tank. And then Amy was like laughing and pointing at me going, that's you, because I've had cycling every day with like enormous amounts of kit in my bike, boxing gloves, changing gear, a dog, you know, like
all the things.
So I think there's that element to it, but I also think there's something about practicality that doesn't get talked about in cycling, where for many parts of the world a bike is the only form of transport that you can afford. It's not a fun thing, it's like what you use all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I think that's worth acknowledging as well, that it is just the only form of transport a family might have. And so, you know, I think organizations like the Bike Project, who also will sell really good secondhand bikes that have been upcycled and serviced, with the funds going back to get decent bikes for people who've recently arrived into the country as asylum seekers, which is hard enough as it is, but, you know, also a basic form of transport to get started is really important. And also just to understand that, you know, there's people who can't even afford a sort of car, or not that, I mean, I'm very anti, I am anti-car, yeah, but you know, that the bike might mean so much to them in the sense of just basic transport. So it's a very accessible, affordable way of getting around, right? And I think we have to just remember that as well. And and I think the future is about cycling and using more like non-carbon emitting ways of getting around.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And also I can't wait till the price of electric bikes comes down significantly to make them more accessible for people. And that's hopefully another thing that will happen in the future. But yeah, I think it's something, I think when it comes to an object that can be sold, of course it's going to fall into class because of then affordability and how people market brands, etc., etc. So there's so many good secondhand bikes out there.
100%. I totally agree with that, because there's really, and I think, and also tapping into that kind of like going and like getting a secondhand bike also starts a kind of like tap you out of like, you know, the heavy weight of like consumerism and capitalism, and like being able to like small kind of steps out of that is really, and then in a way that is like not just like, it's not to do with morals really, it's just to do with being able to like take this object and like keep it going, and it's like a thing, right? And like almost walking into like a new journey with this bike. And sometimes I do think getting a new bike or getting just something new that's new to you is opening up a different chapter, because it's your adventure now, and that doesn't change. If you've got a bike that's secondhand or you've got a bike that's brand new, like it's all about that adventure. So of course we can just be like, oh my gosh, this bike, like, do you know what I mean? It's good fit stuff, it's done up, it's now mine to go into the next chapter. And I feel that a lot with my bikes, because my first bike as an adult, secondhand, old, like vintage, proper like town bike, like, you know, and that was the bike that got me through uni. Like that was the bike that I was getting on. I was like getting like to work, but also just leisurely cycling around. And then my like racer bike, as I mentioned, was given to me by my neighbor, and it was like this real moment of like a deep connection, like, oh my gosh, like Alan is actually giving me this bike that he's had for like 20 years. And it was in such good condition, but it just felt like I was carrying on the story now.
Yeah.
And that is just like a bit priceless, really, in like a lot of ways. It just, you know, it's the story of that, and the story of the fact that he bought that bike when his like daughter was born. Do you know what I mean? It's in that kind of connection to it. It makes me want to go out on that bike and be like, oh, it's me and Alan, lad, let's go. Do you know what I mean? There's something really like beautiful about that.
Yeah, for sure. And like the bikes that I've had, I had to sell the bike once. I think some of you here might remember what was known affectionately as Baskerville bike. And I still regret selling that bike now. And you know, and it's so weird, isn't it? But like, I think I bring things into my life in quite an emotional way. You know, I'm in some ways I'm quite utilitarian about things I wear, but when it comes to things like bikes and things that I know I'm going to use a lot, they're normally embedded with a story or like a route that they came to me. And the bike I have now, that's over 10 years old, has like got so many things added to it, including like some ribbons from when we did bling your bike the Babs on Bikes exhibition. It's still there, that someone put on there. And also that bike was the first bike I rode around London, where I was literally screaming like because it was so terrifying. Because I was doing an exhibition in the first like exhibition I did. I didn't want to like drive at all. I just wanted to, so I took my bike down to London, and I just cycled around, and it was so terrifying and brilliant at the same time. I felt so sick. I was like, woo, look at me cycling around London. And then I remember meeting my best mate at the time, and she's like, let's go around the city of London because nobody's there on a Sunday. So we're like cycling down the middle of the road like a pair of kids reenacting E.T. So, you know, there's something very childlike about my bike. And I also did this horrendous overnight bike ride that was supposed to be 100 miles. And we ended up coming back through London, and they didn't do the route. Like they had to change the route the last minute. And so it went on the bus route. So it just went up and down all the hills of South London. It ended up being like 120 miles. And by the time I finished, all the organisers had gone. And I just remember like trying to push my bike through Waterloo Station, just crying. And go, why did I do that?
Why did I do this to myself?
So there's some pain in that bike. There's memories in that bike. I think it's going to be very hard to let it go. You know, it's just, yeah, it's done me a good job. And so I totally understand what you mean about the history of the bikes that we have. And you know, it's very unlikely that I'll get rid of that bike. I think it will just go into like the museum in my garage of bikes. That will probably happen by the time I'm in my 70s.
Yeah, but then what will happen is like when you want to get rid of it, you won't be getting rid of it because you'll like pass it on to someone.
I'll pass it on.
You know what I mean? And that's the beauty of the next adventure. And I just like love that. I'm just imagining you like cycling up and down these hills and then just by the end of it being like, no.
I fell off. I was so tired. My legs packed up and I just fell off, and I was just like lying there going, this has to be the end soon. Please let this be the end. If any of you know South London, I'm talking like Kernhill. I'm talking like all the Healy. And I was like, and then we went round the same hill again. I was like, what is going on? And then we found out that it's the first year they'd done this overnight bike ride, and they didn't realise there was a run happening on the same day on the Sunday.
No.
So they just rerouted it on the bus route, and I was like,
this is awful, but I'm here, I'm still pedaling.
It's like, I'm never going to cycle again, ever again.
Next day
I cycled to the gallery to open my exhibition really slowly in pain.
I just like, in terms of like reminiscing on stories, I remember the first time I cycled clipped in, and I had like come to your garage in like early morning. It was like 9 or something.
Yes,
super tired, and I was cycling with the team to our retreat. So this is 2019. Yeah, 2019. And we were cycling from Leicester to Nottingham. So we got the train. But on the bike that I had, it was my racer bike that I had. Now it wasn't going to like take me. It wasn't going to take me like all that way. So I remember coming to your house like super early in the morning and like getting on your bike, and you like showed me how to like clip my feet in, and I was like, okay, well, and I was like cycling, like just practice like clipping them out, clipping them in, clipping them out. And that was only for like, it wasn't even that long. I feel like we had like maybe half an hour, like 40 minutes or something like that. And then I just like got on the train, didn't I? Just
then you were off, you went.
Went to Nottingham. We just went went to Leicester and just cycled to Nottingham with like Andy and Imi. Andy was laughing at me so much because I bought like my bike lock with me, so it was like actually weighing down my stuff, and Andy was like, no, you did not do this to yourself, like I actually can't. And even that was like such a like amazing experience, because I never cycled like a long distance before, never cycled clipped in before. And just like having like Andy and Imi, for those people that don't know, Andy Reeve and Imi Deepo are part of the Civic Square team, and just overall like legends in life and like great friends to both of us. And having like those two there, it felt like I can do anything. Like these are my cycling parents for the day. You can do the thing. And it was just really, it was really game changing. And I think Babs on Bikes was game changing. And I just want to read something that Pauline has posted in
Hi Pauline.
chat. Hey Pauline. So Pauline said, I'd given up hoping that I would cycle again after my accident, but through Babs on Bikes, I met Dom, who got me the adaptation, which is called a swing crank. Anyone need to know? And that's what Pauline needed, basically, to cycle again. And even those like small bits of just like the community care, I think that I've felt through cycling, through Babs on Bikes, has been kind of, I think, a little bit unreal, really. I had a moment where I like cycled and I bumped my wheel on like a curb. Someone just stopped and was like, hey, let me like help you, because my wheel like shifted out and stuff. Which I think is really, it's really endearing in a lot of ways. But something I did want to speak to you about actually, Ali, is so not just with Babs on Bikes really, but kind of overall, were there certain things that you realized were kind of coming out throughout the conversations of like why people had stopped cycling, or what was making them not want to cycle? Because I read in Jules Walker's book just kind of about things like people not knowing how to like fix a puncture, and that was the thing that was like putting them kind of off cycling. Is there any, would you give like any advice to those people? Not necessarily here's how you fix a puncture, but what is it that you kind of got from those conversations that seems to be the motivation for people to like step back into it?
I think it was meeting cycling groups actually. This sort of loops into the idea of like owning a bike is not necessarily you don't, I mean, it's not necessarily something you have to do. Like, you don't have to buy a bike. We're like caught up in this system where to do something, we feel like we have to own the thing. But actually, there's a lot of cycling sharing schemes out there, but also these amazing groups of people who actually will, because a lot of barriers that we face are also fear related as well. And certainly going out cycling somewhere that's outside of like the city, you are going to worry about a puncture, obviously, because like, you know, what do you do if that happens? So, you know, you can cycle with someone who knows what they're doing, has a cycling repair kit, and then just ask them to show you how to do it. Watch a YouTube video, you know, on how to fix it. But don't just remember, you can do all of those things if you need to. Like, it's not, I think even the idea of fixing things has become like a really patriarchal thing, that only men can fix stuff. That's like rubbish. And if it's like an access thing, because like trying to get the tire off can be like quite challenging, there's good tire tools that you can use as well. But also don't, it's hard, isn't it, because like you might see that as a barrier to getting out on your bike. So join like a group. And I think a really good example of a really supportive cycling community is the Settee Hub group that I photographed, because my goodness, that when I went to meet them in Ward End Park, they've got this amazing setup. They've got all the bikes in there, and the bike leaders have done like basic training on how to fix your bike. So, and they do like cycle safety sessions, and they do how to repair your bike. And those things are like the barriers that sometimes stop us from doing it right, or thinking, oh, I don't know what to do if I have a puncture. There's loads of cyclists in the city who will help you out. There's loads of Facebook groups. You can pop a message in and say, can someone show me how to do that? And I do think that when you're cycling with people like you feel a bit safer to ask those questions.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I think, but I definitely would particularly recommend Settee for women of colour based in different parts of the city. It's a Muslim only women's cycling community, and I learned loads from them. When we went on our bike ride, I was like, oh, I didn't think about this, I didn't think about that. I got taught how to cycle safer thanks to them. And I think that's it, like, be around supportive people who are also interested in cycling, because all that information is out there.
Absolutely.
Just ask. I was trying to think of other, if anyone knows, has all the links to the groups also in the chat, just share them in there, because there's quite a few different groups of people that I've come across. Cannon Hill Park Cycling Club, Nikki Hancock's Nolan is amazing. Like, she just voluntarily leads bike rides. She'll give you loads of help. She'll, you know, if you need to get your bike sorted out, she'll give you advice. And also Lorraine Dixon does a lot of Dr. Bike surgeries, which are like free pop-up cycling spaces in different parks across Birmingham where you can come and get your bike checked and also give you some advice on what to do. And also at the park, at the floating front room, you've got your Mr. Quark, who's the I don't know what to call him, a soigneur, I guess, or
he's just,
I don't know.
amazing.
We had a whole convo about what his title would be, and I don't know if we ever came to a conclusion.
I feel like the love that Quack has for like bikes, and like also giving you like information about the bike and just things like that is really amazing. And you know, even the cycling clubs and the people that you're speaking about, they're great because that's what they do. They're like giving you that nothing is like precious, right? They like want you to like know about your bike and to love your bike and to really understand it as well, which is really cool, because sometimes I think sometimes that is what breaks down the barrier, the fact that you can see this person's passion and that they just want to give you that. And that's the stuff that I think really like boosts you a little bit and just makes you go, oh, okay, cool. Like the first time I got my bike serviced by Quark, I was like, oh, okay, I actually feel like I know stuff now, which is really great. And it's really like, yeah, just like community joy there, I think. In lots of
Also,
ways.
like, no, like there's Roz, who was part of the Babs on Bikes photography exhibition. Roz, and obviously because of COVID, it's been quite hard to find like these spaces because they had to close. But she's based up at the University of Birmingham, and that's like a drop-in fix shop. Like, so if you've got a bit of a flat tire, she's got a cycling pump. She's also got the tools to like fix your bike. So, you know, if you want to like engage with someone more feminine presenting, because you sometimes don't want to ask someone who's more masculine, you do feel a bit like, oh, I don't want to ask that. But you know, there's Roz up at the university, and yeah, there's like lots of there's bike shops are opening up, and they're never really closed over the last year actually, because they were like an essential service.
Literally.
You know, and there's some of these little bike pumps that I've seen around the city as well that are like also a bike stand.
Yeah.
But listen, good cyclists who know will stop and help you out with a puncture.
Absolutely. And there is also, because it's almost like everyone's been there as well. I think there's that like collective,
yeah,
like, we know what's going on here, don't worry, and like having that like panic as well. I think in Birmingham, I'm optimistic about the future, and I'm trying to be optimistic about the bike instructions of the future.
Yeah.
I'm like crossing my fingers and toes. Like, I just really would love for the city to keep taking steps in that direction, so that there's different ways to get around. Because if there's more really great cycling lanes, that also means that there's parts of the pavement that are also safer for like people to walk, and people who are on scooters, or you know, people that are you know, in wheelchairs, or but there's so much that it offers, and it just feels like it becomes a more understanding city as well. And I'm gonna stop there because this kind of links into a question that we have. And this question is from Pauline. And it says, how can we get people who talk about smart cities, including good bike infrastructures? So how do we kind of get those conversations started? How do we include people in those conversations?
Oh, good question. Just do loads of like mass cycle rides.
Cycle rides.
Just be like,
go. More bikes.
Here's a drop pin. Let's go. Like orienteering on bikes. Just do you know what they do in Mexico? In Mexico City, which I love. They have a no car day once a month on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And it's just the most amazing thing to see, because actually a lot of the main fear of cycling is cars. Well, drivers, right? Yeah. So if you make a day where a significant piece of road is just no traffic whatsoever, and allow people the freedom to cycle without the risk of being hit by a car, that would be, I'd say, like, to start things off would be helpful, because I think that's the biggest issue on the infrastructure in cities that we have. And if you get people involved and they care and support it, then it helps us to like mobilize and get the infrastructure done, because I think it is about that visibility, isn't it? And I think, I'm not sure on the exact time frame, but I do believe like Amsterdam, it took a decade of doing things like that to get that infrastructure in place to make it a cycling dominant city.
Yeah,
it took a long time.
Yeah.
You know, we did in the Babs on Bikes, as a sort of kind of to pay tribute to that, we did like a slow cycle where we basically just rode down Kingsheath High Street in a big line and stopped all the traffic.
Oh my gosh.
And it was so empowering. We got loads of abuse, loads of people shouted at us, honked their horns, but it actually made us just go even slower. And we only did it a little bit, but you need some interventions like that. Don't go down like the M6 doing that, like be reasonable.
We're not suggesting that.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that. Kids, don't go out there like down the main motorways on your bikes, but just little interactions like that. And also you need support from people who make these policies, right? Who make decisions about where the money's spent.
Yeah.
Because we can't carry on as we are within this car culture if we want to have any impact or effect on climate change. So I don't fully understand what a smart city is. Like, I don't know what that really means. Yeah, I haven't really looked into that, but I do know more about the sort of neighborhood donut, the economics that Kate Rayworth writes about. And I feel like cycling is significantly a huge part in that because of that 20-minute neighborhood. So, I suppose if you can cycle there in 20 minutes, that's a good start. And it would, if the infrastructure is there for people to get from one side of the city to the other on a bike.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, because I don't really know what that smart city means. Because Birmingham ain't smart.
Hopefully we'll get there one day. Like, I would really.
I know it's an aspiration. I might Google it now.
I would like to ask another question, and this ties into a Q&A that we have as well. What are the plans for Babs on Bikes, and can anyone get involved? And if they wanted to get involved, how would they do that? Rupi, this is for you, this answer right now.
Okay, so pre the pandemonium, panna cotta, panacea, whatever word you want,
panoramic,
the last year and a half, we were really lucky to get a little bit of money from the Dream Fund from Civic Square to do cycling cinema, and we had a little tryout, a little DIY one that was pretty cool. And then our aspiration in the summer just gone was to have a full-on cycle in cinema, which unfortunately hasn't happened. So we will plan to do that again this summer. Hooray. Now we can meet in groups of people outside. That will be one of the first things we do. And when we do that, we'll have more information about where Babs on Bikes is going to go next. We don't exist as any kind of Instagram page, but you can use the hashtag Babs on Bikes and share photos of yourself on your bike, around your bike, any advice about your bikes. Like, we want to hear from you. And eventually, and I know that my friend Bing's going to laugh at this, I might start yet another Instagram account of something, because these really need a place to be held. And hopefully you can all go out there and do portraits of each other. It's not just down to like me as one photographer to do this. I'd love to see like your versions and visions of being a Bab on Bike. And as we collect this together, it will exist as an archive, of like a living archive of our experience of cycling. And yeah, that's kind of where we're going with it. And we'll have a few different events in the summer as well. So, but I do feel like it is an Instagram page, and I'd love to get all the work from 2 years ago on there and just keep it going.
All the things. So Ali, could you maybe just talk a little bit about what the cycling cinema was, and like yeah, not kind of how that came about, but just like, what is that for anyone here who doesn't quite know?
Yeah, sure. So like, there was this big push at the start of the pandemic, or not a big push, but this idea about getting back to some sort of normal would be about driving into a cinema. And I was like, oh no, cars. What about if we just cycle into a cinema instead, took our bikes and our picnic blankets and watched films that were cycling orientated, right? So documentaries and fictional films. So that's what it is. So you can come in with your bike, with your family, on your own, with your dog, whoever, and sit down and watch a film. That's the idea behind it. And hopefully we'll have a proper popcorn machine and some comfortable seating as well. And if it's like in the afternoon moving into night, I've got this whole idea about having amazing bike lights and a little bit of like a bike light parade as you leave the cinema. I don't know.
Bike light parade. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Basically,
yes, you can bring your T-bike, Rupi. So I just saw that pop in there.
Yes, please. Oh my gosh, I'm already excited. I'm excited for kind of being able to experience. I'm trying to like not say the word like normality, because it's actually more of a like new reality. I am excited to kind of take all the things that like we've learned about like how we get around, how we like feel about things, what makes us feel good, and like take that into this new reality. And like this cycling cinema is like so cool, because I think there's like this connection with drive-in cinemas being like this real like American dream type thing, you know what I mean? That's how I've like learned about them anyway. So to just have like a cycling cinema, I'm just like, yes. And I wasn't able to go to that event, so I'm like super stoked for that to even like be a reality, because these are the new things that are gonna make us kind of excited for this new reality, I think. And like just being able to experience not only the things that we kind of know to be real and correct anyway, right? Like cycling, if you're into it, you're like into it, but being able to like take new experiences into that as well. Like I think that's like the real like beauty of it as well. So
and also just to add to that, if you're making any short films about women or non-binary people and cycling, send them to me.
Let us know.
And we'll show them. Yeah, we'd love to do like a little short film section as well.
Yeah, that would be like really awesome. Oh gosh, I just feel like the chat is just like going off, like everyone's just like giving like so many like amazing like people who are doing great things, and just like dropping their like links in and stuff, which is amazing. We'll put the links together and like maybe we'll post those out on socials as well, just to like get people connected and we can do things together. It's all fun.
Yes, please.
It's awesome. So Ali, this may be my last question. I don't know. Who knows when you're on the settee? You've kind of mentioned some of the people that you like, you know, are doing really great things that you've already kind of connected with. So I just wanted to know if you had like any other kind of I don't know if recommendation is the right word, but if you have any other people that you would like to just kind of big up, shout out. I've also got a few as well. Any films or anything like that you think people could kind of get their teeth into?
That's a really good question. I think like I feel like I've mentioned everything that I wanted to, like in relation to cycling, like books that I've read and films that I've watched. I think the most recent film my friend Andy Revo sent me, which was All Bodies on Bikes, which I really loved. I really loved that. And about like how even body shaming like falls into mountain biking as well, and who gets to ride the mountain bikes. And I was like, wow. So that's a really wonderful film. And I really like films about any women or non-binary people on BMX bikes, and you know, and doing tricks and like, you know, that sort of thing. So
absolutely.
There's a few on Instagram and I've forgotten their names off the top of my head that I follow.
That's okay. We can just add them. We can just add them to this
please
list.
do. Like, and actually, I think that's it really. I think Gears for Queers, I think, is a book I've mentioned that I really enjoyed. Yeah.
Amazing.
That's it. I think also like the people I photographed, they're just they're just all, they're all legends in their own right.
People with stories.
Yeah, and really like cool. the relationship to their bikes in relation to your emotional and mental well-being is so powerful for me personally. And like my mate Jenny Matthews is a conflict photographer, and she's she's incredible. Like she's been a photographer for like 45 years, and the thing that she does every time she comes back from something difficult, she just gets on a town bike that she's had probably over 30 years and just goes cycling around. And I'm like, that is kind of where I started with my cycling. I never wanted to do huge miles or anything like that. It was about this really. It was about like, oh wow, I don't have to wear any body armor and watch where I'm standing. I can just get on the bike and ride around. I might even go up the curb and I might just go around here and la la la. So yeah, and I think it's just everyday stories of everyday people on their bikes is what really inspires me. So please send them.
Absolutely.
Twitter, Instagram, email, anywhere.
I feel really connected to this, like, to this almost like washing away of the day or of the week or of the month or whatever, like going out for like a cycle. And I think for me, someone who like identifies as being non-binary, there's like space in sports or in anything kind of like fitness, or, you know, people view cycling in terms of fitness as well, but like in those types of spaces, sometimes for me to find like the space for me within that sometimes can feel difficult and can feel like a bigger task than just getting on my bike. But what I found is like, I think with the freedom that like getting on my bike gives me, I'm just like, oh yeah, cool, I can do that thing that is for me, if that makes sense. Whereas like in other spaces, I have to kind of, not that I have to, but I do question where my space is within that, and maybe presenting more like feminine to certain people, how they perceive me. It's almost like having to really be very like rooted in my identity as being non-binary and being like, okay, like, it's fine that I look like this and you may perceive me as this, but like, is this space actually okay for me? Like, can I actually be here? So I think my bike gives me that freedom to just be like, of course, it's like on my bike since I was like a kid, like this is the thing that I know really well and feel really connected to. So it's
Are
really
you going to show your picture?
Oh, shall I? Okay. I did actually put it on the presentation. And then I was like, should I put this up? I don't know.
Yes, I am asking you to.
Okay. So this
one
is
of my favorite portraits.
So this is the photo that Ali B took.
So beautiful.
This was a really great day. Like, and you even mentioned it, right? Like, you literally having your camera around your neck and we're just like cycling around like near where we live. And there's something really cool about it. And I felt like, oh, this is the adventure, right? Like, this is the cool thing. And that what gets me about this photo as well is that like the bike isn't even in it, really. Like, you could just see my belly in like the tiniest corner. But like, that is how I sit on my bike all the time. Like, if I'm just there, like that is the pose that you see. If I'm like waiting at traffic lights or whatever, that's what you'll see, like, or me like on my handlebars or something. So I always feel like this photo is like, it's pure joy, because I'm like, oh yeah, like that's actually what I look. This is the pose that no one would see, really, that people don't
it just, again, it deconstructs the way that people are expected to sit or look on their bike.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that you look so relaxed here, and also the light just like absolutely perfect at that point in time. It's almost like a Dutch painting. Of this,
it was like, really like a good day, like, and
painterly light, you know.
It was really fun. I think that's like what I can tie that down to. And like, I remember like when we were going through like one of the streets, like I saw someone that I knew and I was like, hey, can't stop, just get my photo taken. You were like laughing, we were just like pedaling along. It was really great. It was fun.
I definitely have no care for my camera. I think a few portraits that I did, I was definitely cycling along with my camera, like, oh yeah, that's a good picture. So don't ask me to lead any cycling safety workshops, everyone.
Oh god.
Not that person.
Ali, I just want to say like a huge thank you for like being on the Settee again, and us being able to connect over Babs on Bikes, and just kind of the journey, the stories, the things, the reminiscing. It's been amazing. And I was really looking forward to chatting to you today. And as always, like, I just feel very grateful to have been able to just like connect again and just chat about this stuff, because it's just like really great. And I hope that, you know, anyone who's here with us in Zoom or is watching later that like you feel like you can go out and have these like moments and these
Yes.
like memories. Like that's really what we want. And Nikki B, who's like curated this series, is like awesome, firstly. But secondly, has done such an amazing job of like tying in different events with also like bike rides tied into there as well, and some talks. And you know, while Nikki was like producing this and putting this together and curating it, like that was always at the forefront. It's always there to like just get people to like just try it out. Just, you know, don't be feel like you're on your own as well. Like there's lots of people who are doing really great things, and they're just normal people like us, right, who are getting on their bikes another day, you know, and feeling really good about that. So yes, Ali, thank you so much. I'm just gonna go.
Joy.
Yes, and don't forget to tag Babs on Bikes, by the way. And any photos are really great to see those. So I just want to let everyone know about the next part of the series, which is the Starting Revolutions series. So, oh, that was the actual screen that I needed to share. Let's put that back on. That was the thing. So our next event is called Revolutions, and it's with Jules Walker in conversation with Hannah Ross, two people that we've mentioned in this talk, so we're linking it in. I'm really excited to kind of hear this talk, because I've read Jules's book. I haven't read Revolutions yet, so I'm kind of looking forward to getting my teeth into that a little bit as well. So yeah, Jules Walker will be in conversation with Hannah Ross, and they'll be speaking about the book, the freedom of riding, cycling, and what that is for like the women that are having those experiences, and obviously the varied histories of cycling too. So yes, this will be happening on Hopin. And the tickets are £5. If you're part of the front room key, then the tickets are if you're part of the front room key, the tickets are free for you to come, because you're part of our neighbourhood and our family and our crew. And then it's £2.50 for extended family. So yes, I would love to see you all there. Thank you all for just like joining us. It's been like a joy, and it's actually been really great to have this talk on like a Sunday evening. Like, what? It feels really great. Yeah, Ali, thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate you. I appreciate your passion for starting things and doing things.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone in the chat, and I will hopefully see you at this Revolutions event. That would be really lovely. So yeah, have a great Sunday evening, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye.